The 14th floor of Bain & Pierre Consulting buzzed with anticipation as Emily Zhang stood before the quarterly review meeting. Her white blouse, purchased from a modest department store, remained perfectly pressed, though not for long. She gripped her meticulously prepared presentation, months of research condensed into pages that could revolutionize the company's approach. This kindergarten-level work is what you bring to a professional meeting? Mary Sanders's voice cut through the air, sharp as glass. The project director's designer heels clicked against hardwood as she circled Emily like a predator sizing up prey. Snickers echoed from the conference table where Louis, his Italian roast coffee steaming in hand, exchanged knowing looks with Grace and Michael. Emily's fingers trembled slightly, but her voice remained steady. The data shows we could save millions by... The scalding liquid hit her chest before she registered Louis's movement. Coffee soaked through white fabric as gasps and laughter filled the room. Her papers scattered across imported tiles, research floating away like fallen leaves. Through tears she refused to shed, Emily caught a glimpse of Brittany Woods, the junior copywriter, half rising from her seat, horror etched across her features. The boardroom's atmosphere shifted from mockery to malice. "Now you really match your bargain bin wardrobe," Mary declared, her voice carrying authority she hadn't earned. The conference room's glass walls exposed Emily's humiliation to the entire floor, where colleagues pretended to work while stealing glances at the unfolding scene. Emily's brilliant analysis, the one that could have transformed their quarterly projections, lay scattered and coffee-stained at her feet. Her hands, steady through countless presentations, finally betrayed her composure. Yet her eyes, meeting each smirking face around the table, held something her tormentors missed: quiet determination. As she turned to leave, someone's outstretched foot sent her stumbling. The room erupted in renewed laughter, their cruel amusement following her as she walked with measured steps toward the bathroom, dignity intact despite her stained appearance. Before we continue this shocking story of workplace injustice and sweet revenge, I want to hear from you, our Tales of Light family. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Are toxic workplaces like this common in your area? Your experiences matter, and your voice deserves to be heard. You might wonder how a talented professional found herself enduring such treatment, or more importantly, why she chose to remain silent for so long. The truth lies 3 years earlier, in a decision that would test her character and reshape an entire corporation. To understand this moment, the coffee stains, the cruel laughter, and the phone call that would change everything, we need to step back. Back to when Emily Zhang, wife of billionaire David Morgan, made a choice that went against every privilege life had handed her. In suburban Michigan, where strip malls dotted the landscape, the Zhang family convenience store stood as a testament to perseverance. Mr. and Mrs. Zhang arrived in America with 2 suitcases and a dream, their savings invested in a modest storefront with flickering fluorescent lights and creaking linoleum floors. For 18 hours daily, they worked side by side, mastering English through conversations with customers, memorizing product locations, and calculating prices faster than their ancient cash register. Their daughter Emily spent afternoons perched behind the counter, homework spread across the glass display case, watching her parents transform their small business into a neighborhood cornerstone. Mrs. Zhang's gentle reminders to rushing customers about forgotten umbrellas on rainy days, and Mr. Zhang's habit of keeping favorite candies aside for regular patrons, built more than a customer base. They created a community. While other store owners installed bulletproof glass and security cameras, the Zhangs maintained their open counter, believing trust earned trust in return. Their store never made headlines or fortune lists, but it put Emily through college and taught her lessons no business school could offer. Dignity transcends circumstances, kindness costs nothing, and true success grows from serving others. Emily absorbed her parents' philosophy through quiet observation and daily practice. Each morning began at 5 a.m., helping her father stock shelves before school. Her mother's voice, soft but firm, repeated wisdom that would later guide her corporate journey. Your character speaks louder than your wallet. The Zhangs taught excellence through example. Every product faced forward, every shelf gleamed, every customer interaction ended with genuine gratitude. When local teens shoplifted, her parents responded not with anger, but by offering them part-time jobs. Everyone deserves a chance to choose a better path, her father explained. These lessons shaped Emily's core. Respect wasn't tied to status, integrity meant doing right even when unobserved, and true power lay in lifting others. While classmates chased designer labels, Emily found pride in her mother's carefully mended hand-me-downs, understanding that worth extended beyond appearances. Between store shifts and homework sessions, Emily crafted an academic record that turned heads across Michigan. Her calculus teacher discovered her solving complex equations by moonlight after closing inventory. The school counselor found her college applications tucked between grocery invoices, each essay polished to perfection. Michigan State's admission board unanimously awarded her a full scholarship. Impressed not just by her perfect GPA, but by recommendation letters from customers whose lives she'd touched. The elderly woman whose prescriptions Emily delivered during snowstorms. The single father whose children she tutored free of charge. In university, she maintained her pattern of quiet brilliance. While others networked at parties, Emily led study groups, transforming struggling students into academic achievers. Her professors noted something rare: a student who pursued knowledge not for accolades, but for the pure joy of learning and sharing understanding with others. Few knew that the real love story between Emily and David began with an argument. At Michigan State's annual business symposium, while others sat quietly taking notes, one voice cut through the reverent silence. "But Mr. Morgan, how can you justify prioritizing profit margins over community impact?" David, standing at the podium, found himself staring at an earnest face in the third row. For the first time in his career, someone wasn't asking about his billions or his business empire. She was questioning his conscience. That question led to coffee, which turned into dinner at her parents' store. The billionaire found himself stocking shelves, learning the names of regular customers, and falling deeply in love with a woman who saw wealth as a tool for change, not a measure of worth. They married quietly, Emily wearing her mother's restored wedding dress, serving dinner to local families instead of hosting a grand gala. A union of hearts, not headlines. One evening, as David and Emily sat in their kitchen, him with his designer coffee, her with tea in her mother's old cup, she made an announcement that left him stunned. "I want to work at Bain & Pierre," she said, stirring honey into her tea. Not as a Morgan, but as Emily Zhang. David lowered his cup. "You know I own the company." "Exactly," she smiled. "Which is why no one should know I'm your wife." She explained her vision. Starting from the bottom, proving herself without the Morgan name opening doors. David saw the familiar determination in her eyes, the same look she had when challenging him at that symposium years ago. "No special treatment," she insisted. "I want to earn every step up that ladder." David agreed, not knowing this decision would test their principles in ways neither could imagine. Dawn barely touched the windows of Bain & Pierre's 14th floor when Emily Zhang slipped into her cubicle each morning. The space, tucked into a forgotten corner where the air conditioning sputtered and whined, became her sanctuary. A small jade plant, her mother's parting gift, sat beside a computer that had seen better days. "You need to look successful to be successful," her colleagues would say, strutting past in their designer heels. Emily would smile, smoothing her department store blazer. the weight of her simple gold band reminding her of the vault at home where the real Morgan heirloom ring lay hidden. Her worn leather bag, a faithful companion since college days, carried lunch in mismatched containers, dumplings, stir-fries, and soups that filled the break room with tempting aromas. While others ordered expensive takeout, Emily's homemade meals became both a source of office jokes and secret envy. "Still using that dinosaur?" Someone would snicker at her flip phone, never imagining it held direct access to one of America's most influential billionaires. But Emily simply nodded, hiding her smile behind careful notes taken with a ballpoint pen while others tapped away on gleaming tablets. Everything changed the day Mary Sanders swept through the office like a perfectly tailored storm. Fresh from a rival firm, the new project director brought with her an inner circle that would transform the 14th floor's dynamic. "First impressions are everything in consulting," Mary announced during her first team meeting, her Louboutin heels clicking against marble floors. Her calculating gaze lingered on Emily's modest attire, lips curling slightly. That subtle sneer would become all too familiar in the months ahead. Lewis Parker, senior account manager, became Mary's unofficial lieutenant. His Italian suits matched his Italian espresso habit, both worn like armor. "Image is investment," he'd proclaim, loudly enough for Emily to hear while sipping his $9 coffee. Grace Chen from marketing, despite sharing Emily's Chinese heritage, seemed determined to distance herself from any connection. "Some people just don't understand corporate culture," she'd whisper to Michael Thompson, their sales director, both stealing glances at Emily's corner. Together, they formed what the floor secretly called the Circle, Mary's carefully curated court of influence. They claimed the best meeting rooms, dominated conversations, and controlled the subtle currency of office politics: information. Their power plays were elegant, their exclusions precise, their judgments swift. And Emily, with her quiet competence and modest ways, became their favorite target, though they'd soon learn appearances could be deceiving. Hope arrived in pink sneakers and a bright smile. Brittany Woods, fresh from college and eager to prove herself, didn't quite fit the Circle's polished mold. On her first day, she accidentally spilled coffee on her new blazer and found herself in the break room, fighting back tears. Emily quietly appeared with a stain removal pen and a warm smile. "My mother's secret weapon," she whispered, demonstrating the trick she'd learned from years at the family store. "Works every time." From that moment, Brittany saw what others missed. She noticed how Emily's analysis always found solutions others overlooked, how her quiet suggestions in meetings often held the most wisdom. During lunch breaks, while others flocked to Mary's tales of corporate conquest, Brittany would slip into Emily's corner, sharing stories and homemade dumplings. "You remind me of my favorite professor," Brittany once said. "She taught me success isn't about being the loudest in the room." The attacks began like paper cuts, small, sharp, and increasingly frequent. Mary's morning greetings would reach everyone except Emily's corner. Meeting invitations mysteriously landed in spam folders, project deadlines changed without notice, and crucial emails somehow always missed her inbox. "Oh, I assumed you wouldn't be interested in the client dinner," Grace would say, adjusting her designer glasses. "It's at that new French restaurant. Quite expensive." The underlying message rang clear. Some people didn't belong in certain circles. Michael mastered the art of the casual slight. "Hey Emily, my housekeeper has the same bag. Isn't that cute?" His words would float across the office, drawing snickers from the circle, while others studied their screens intently. During presentations, Lewis developed a habit of interrupting Emily's carefully researched analyses. "Let's hear from someone with more executive presence," he'd suggest, nodding toward Mary's favorites. The fact that Emily's quiet insights often proved correct only seemed to fuel their resentment. Brittany watched it all, her pink sneakers scuffing nervously under her desk, Once, she tried sharing Emily's brilliant market strategy in a meeting, only to have Mary cut her off with a sharp, "Remember your place, dear. Some of us actually have experience in this industry." The message was clear. Align with the circle or share in Emily's isolation. The quarterly budget meeting became the breaking point. Emily had spent weeks uncovering a critical flaw in their financial projections, one that could save the company millions. Her research sat neatly compiled in folders on her desk, waiting for the morning presentation. The city still slept when Emily entered her cubicle that morning, her research tucked safely in her worn leather bag. For 3 months, she'd arrived before dawn, piecing together a pattern others had missed. The company was hemorrhaging money through outdated supply chains, millions slipping away in overlooked inefficiencies. Her proposal wasn't just analysis, it was art. Pages of meticulously crafted spreadsheets told a story of potential savings that could transform Bain & Pierre's entire operation. Each graph, each calculation represented countless early mornings and late nights, time stolen between the circle's constant interference. She'd triple-checked every number, knowing Mary's team would pounce on even the smallest error. The presentation sat ready on her ancient computer, backed up on 2 flash drives, a lesson learned from too many accidental deletions. Even her usual simple blouse had been carefully pressed the night before, a white canvas chosen to project professional confidence. What Emily didn't know, as she reviewed her findings one final time in the quiet morning light, was that this presentation would change far more than just the company's bottom line. 9 o'clock approached like gathering storm clouds. The main conference room, with its wall of windows overlooking the city, filled with the usual suspects. Mary Sanders claimed her throne at the head of the mahogany table, her designer suit as sharp as her calculating smile. The circle arranged themselves around her like perfectly positioned chess pieces. Louis arrived carrying his signature Italian roast, the steam rising like warning signals. Grace and Michael huddled near Mary, their whispers and glances toward Emily's presentation materials barely concealed. The air felt heavy with expensive perfume and unspoken intentions. Brittany slipped in quietly, her pink sneakers a splash of innocence in the corporate jungle. She chose a seat near the middle, offering Emily a small smile that felt like a life raft in hostile waters. Other employees filed in, filling the remaining chairs with the careful precision of those who knew a show was about to begin. Emily stood at the podium, her research spread before her like armor. Through the windows behind her, sunlight caught her simple gold band. A quiet reminder of the power she chose not to wield. The projector hummed to life, her title slide illuminating the screen. "Let me begin by highlighting our current supply chain inefficiencies," Emily started, her voice steady despite the predatory gleam in Mary's eyes. She hadn't even reached her second slide when the interruption came. "Inefficiencies?" Mary's voice sliced through the air like a perfectly manicured knife. "The only inefficiency I see is allowing someone with your limited experience to waste our valuable time." Snickers rippled through the circle as Mary rose, her Louboutins clicking against the floor like a countdown. Emily tried to continue, pointing to her carefully crafted graphs. "If you look at the data—" "Oh, let's look at the data," Grace chimed in, her designer glasses catching the morning light. "Let's discuss how someone who can't even invest in proper business attire presumes to advise us on million-dollar decisions." More laughter, broader now, spreading through the room like poison. Michael leaned forward, his custom suit crinkling slightly. "Maybe she should stick to running her parents' little corner shop. I hear convenience stores are more her speed." The jab found its mark, though Emily's expression remained composed. "I mean, really?" Mary circled the podium like a shark scenting blood. Did you actually think anyone would take financial advice from someone who brings leftover takeout for lunch and carries a bag that looks like it came from a garage sale? Brittany's face flushed red with suppressed anger, her fingers gripping her notebook until her knuckles turned white. But the circle's audience was captivated, feeding off each cruel comment like sharks in a feeding frenzy. Emily stood perfectly still, her research scattered across the podium, each page representing countless hours of work, now drowning in a sea of mockery. But it was what happened next that would turn this professional execution into corporate legend. Louis rose from his seat, his Italian roast coffee swirling in its premium paper cup. The smirk on his face telegraphed what was coming, but Emily stood her ground. Time seemed to slow as he approached the podium, each step deliberate, theatrical. "You know, Emily," he drawled, holding his coffee aloft like a conductor's baton, "I think your presentation needs a little warming up." The room held its breath, anticipation crackling in the air like static before lightning strikes. The coffee arcs through the air with practiced precision. Emily watched, time crystallizing into a single moment as the dark liquid splashed across her crisp white blouse. The heat seeped through the fabric, but it wasn't nearly as searing as the laughter that erupted around her. "Oh dear," Mary's voice dripped with false concern. "Now you really can add cleaning lady to your resume. Better start with your own clothes first." The circle's laughter swelled like a cruel symphony. Papers scattered as Emily stepped back, her months of research raining down like confetti at a funeral for her dignity. Coffee dripped onto her sensible shoes, forming small pools on the polished floor. Through the conference room's glass walls, other employees pretended not to watch, their faces a mix of discomfort and relief that they weren't the target. Brittany half rose from her chair, pink sneakers squeaking against the floor, but Mary's sharp glare froze her in place. "Sit down, Junior, unless you'd like to join her." Emily gathered what remained of her presentation, coffee staining the corners of pages that held solutions worth millions. As she turned to leave, someone's foot appeared in her path. A final act in this carefully choreographed humiliation. "My dear Tales of Light family, I can feel your hearts racing with anger right now. Before we see what happens next, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe. Would you have maintained Emily's composure in this situation? Share your thoughts below. Your voice matters in our community." The walk to the bathroom felt endless, each step leaving coffee-stained footprints on the corporate carpet. The air in the conference room crackled with unspoken tension after Emily's departure. The circle's laughter died down to nervous chuckles, then to uncomfortable silence. Something about Emily's quiet dignity in the face of humiliation left an unsettling feeling in the room. Brittany's pink sneakers remained rooted to the floor, her notebook clutched to her chest like a shield. Other employees shifted in their seats, suddenly fascinated by their phones or laptops, avoiding the circle's triumphant gazes. Mary's victory lap around the conference table felt forced now, her heels clicking against the floor like a time bomb counting down. Louis fiddled with his empty coffee cup, while Grace and Michael exchanged glances that held a hint of uncertainty. None of them realized they were sitting in the calm before a storm. In less than 15 minutes, their perfectly ordered corporate world would shatter like fine china on marble floors. The executive bathroom's marble countertops reflected Emily's composure, crumbling at last. Coffee dripped from her blouse onto the imported tiles, each drop echoing in the pristine space. Her fingers trembled as she dabbed at the stains with paper towels, but her eyes in the mirror told a different story, not of defeat, but of determination. Several months of patient endurance flashed through her mind. The misplaced reports, the accidental meeting exclusions, the whispered comments about her clothes, her lunch, her very existence in their polished corporate world. She'd earned every small victory, solve problems others couldn't see, all while carrying a secret that could have changed everything with a single word. A junior associate hurried in, stopped short at the sight of Emily, and quickly retreated, no doubt rushing to report the scene to the circle. The news would spread. Emily Zhang was crying in the bathroom, broken at last. They'd expect her to resign, to slink away in shame, another victim of corporate culture's brutal hierarchy. But they'd misread her silence for weakness, her modesty for insecurity. As she stared at her reflection, at the coffee stains spreading across her simple white blouse, Emily reached a decision. Some battles weren't won through patience. They were won by changing the rules of engagement. The flip phone felt heavy in Emily's hands, like the weight of a decision long delayed. Her fingers moved across familiar numbers, not the simple office extension everyone knew, but a private line that could reshape their world with a single conversation. "David?" Her voice wavered for the first time that day. "It's me." Silence. "Then are you crying?" Emily's voice caught as she described the coffee, the laughter, the months of torment. With each detail, she could hear David's breathing grow heavier, more controlled, the kind of calm that preceded corporate storms. "They did what?" His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. The sound of car keys jingling carried through the line. "I'm already nearby." "David, wait." Emily caught her reflection again, straightened her shoulders. "When you come, make it count." The phone crackled with his sharp intake of breath. Emily could picture his knuckles whitening around the steering wheel, jaw clenched in that way that made even board members nervous. "Stay in the building," he ordered, his tone carrying years of boardroom authority. 15 minutes. That's all I need to show them exactly who they've been tormenting. The line went dead, leaving Emily with the certainty that the circle's perfectly ordered world was about to shatter. The office had barely settled back into its rhythm when every computer screen lit up simultaneously. The familiar ping of incoming mail echoed across the floor like warning bells. A message from the HR director flashed urgently on each monitor. All staff are required to attend an immediate mandatory emergency meeting in the main conference room regarding a critical company matter. No exceptions. The circle exchanged puzzled glances. Mary reached for her phone, no doubt trying to decode this disruption to her carefully controlled domain. "I wasn't informed of any emergency meeting," she muttered, her perfectly manicured nails clicking against the screen. Louis straightened his coffee-stained tie, a proud badge of his earlier performance. "Probably some routine corporate announcement," he smirked, but his voice carried a note of uncertainty. Grace frantically whispered to Michael, "Did you hear anything about this?" As employees filed nervously toward the conference room, Brittany noticed Emily's empty cubicle. The coffee-stained papers still lay scattered across her desk, but something in the air had shifted. The hunters were about to become the hunted. They just didn't know it yet. The conference room filled with nervous energy, whispered theories bouncing off glass walls. The same space that had witnessed Emily's humiliation just 30 minutes ago now crackled with unspoken tension. Mary claimed her usual seat at the head of the table, but her throne suddenly felt less secure. "Where's Emily?" Someone whispered. "Probably crying in the bathroom still," Louis joked, but his laughter died quickly in the heavy air. The HR director stood at the podium, his usually calm demeanor replaced by barely concealed anxiety. His eyes kept darting to the door, his tablet trembling slightly in his hands. Whatever was coming, it was big enough to shake even the highest levels of management. Security guards appeared silently at both entrances, not their usual day-shift team, but stern-faced professionals in dark suits and earpieces. Grace clutched Michael's arm, her designer bracelet clicking nervously against the table. Brittany, still in her pink sneakers, noticed an expensive black car pulling up outside the building. Through the conference room's wall of windows, she watched as a figure stepped out, straightened his tie, and strode toward the entrance with purposeful steps. The click of expensive shoes echoed down the hallway, growing louder with each step. The HR director's face drained of color as he glanced at his tablet, then the door, then back again. The room fell into a silence so complete you could hear the air conditioning hum. Mary's attempt to check her phone was cut short by a sharp look from one of the security guards. Lewis's empty coffee cup trembled slightly in his hands. The circle's usual confidence crumbled like a house of cards in a storm. Through the glass walls, they watched a group of suits approach. Legal team, by the look of their briefcases and stern expressions. But it was the man leading them that caused the air to freeze in everyone's lungs. Even those who had never seen his face recognized David Morgan from magazine covers and news reports. The hunter had arrived. The double doors swung open with the force of Judgment Day. David Morgan's presence filled the room like a storm front, his tailored suit and commanding stance marking him as corporate royalty. The legal team filed in behind him, their briefcases landing on the conference table with synchronized thuds that made the circle flinch. But it was his eyes that froze the blood in everyone's veins, Arctic blue, scanning the room with the practiced precision of a predator cataloging prey. His gaze lingered on Lewis's coffee-stained tie, Mary's suddenly precarious perch at the head of the table, the scattered papers still bearing evidence of their cruelty. Ladies and gentlemen, his voice carried the quiet authority of someone who never needed to shout to be heard. I apologize for interrupting your entertaining morning. The word entertaining cut through the air like a blade wrapped in silk. The HR director seemed to shrink behind his podium, while the security guards moved to flank the exits. But David wasn't finished. His next words would rewrite everything they thought they knew about power in this office. I believe you've already met my wife. The side door opened, and Emily entered, still in her coffee-stained blouse, still in her modest clothes, but somehow transformed. She carried herself differently now, her shoulders back, her chin lifted, every step radiating the quiet confidence of someone who had chosen to be humble rather than someone who had no choice. The coffee stains on her white blouse now looked less like marks of humiliation and more like badges of battle, proof of the prejudice she had endured. Her simple gold band caught the morning light, no longer a symbol of modesty, but a testament to her integrity. As she walked to stand beside David, their matching wedding rings now obvious for all to see, the power of her chosen simplicity became clear. She hadn't needed designer labels or expensive accessories to command respect. She had earned it through character and capability. When she spoke, her voice carried the same gentle tone they'd always known, but now it commanded the attention of everyone present. I believe we were discussing corporate inefficiencies? The question hung in the air like a sword of Damocles over the circle's heads. Mary's designer chair, once her throne, now felt like a trap. She half rose, perhaps to offer her seat, but David's slight headshake froze her in place. The circle, who had dominated the room just an hour ago, now shrank into their expensive suits like children caught bullying by the principal. The HR director scurried from his podium, nearly tripping in his haste to offer it to David. But it was Emily who stepped forward, coffee stains and all, to take her place at the front of the room. The same podium where they had humiliated her now became her command center. For months, she began, her voice carrying to every corner, I've watched this company waste millions through inefficiency. Not just in our supply chains, which my presentation would have shown. She paused, looking pointedly at the coffee stains, but in promoting a culture that values appearance over ability, cruelty over competence. David stood beside her, a silent sentinel of authority, while his legal team opened their briefcases with ominous precision. The sound of papers being arranged echoed like a countdown to judgment. The circle's perfectly maintained facades cracked like cheap varnish. Mary's face, usually frozen in a practiced smile, cycled through shock, fear, and desperate calculation. Her manicured hands trembled as she reached for her water glass, nearly knocking it over. Louis slumped in his chair, his earlier bravado evaporating like spilled coffee. The tie he had worn so proudly minutes ago, stained from his act of cruelty, now felt like a noose around his neck. His eyes kept darting to the security guards at the doors, perhaps calculating the odds of a quick escape. Grace's designer glasses couldn't hide her tears of panic as she frantically whispered to Michael, whose usual sales pitch confidence had dissolved into a sickly pallor. "We didn't know. We never meant." Their excuses died in their throats as David's arctic gaze swept over them. The most telling reaction came from Mary. In a last-ditch effort to salvage her position, she stood up, her Louboutins wobbling slightly. "Mrs. Morgan, I can explain everything. We were just trying to maintain professional standards." "Professional standards?" Emily's quiet interruption cut through Mary's explanation like a silk-wrapped razor. "Like spilling coffee on colleagues, or mocking their lunch choices? Please, Miss Sanders, do explain how that maintains professional standards." Mary sank back into her chair, her carefully constructed world collapsing around her designer's shoulders. David stepped forward, his presence silencing even the whispered prayers of the circle. "The board has been dissolved. Management is terminated, effective immediately." Each word fell like a gavel strike. "Security will escort you out." The guards moved with military precision. Mary's protest died in her throat as her access badge was cut from her designer lanyard. Louis's Italian leather briefcase was emptied onto the table, his personal items separated from company property. Grace and Michael stood frozen as their computers were locked remotely with a few keystrokes from IT. The mighty circle, who had reigned over the 14th floor with cruel authority just hours ago, were reduced to a parade of shame. Their designer heels and Italian shoes squeaked against marble floors as they were marched out, their kingdoms crumbling, their power evaporating like morning dew under the harsh sun of consequence. As the echo of the circle's departure faded, Emily's voice filled the stunned silence. "Power doesn't require cruelty," she addressed the remaining employees, still in her coffee-stained blouse, now a symbol of transformation rather than humiliation. "True leadership lifts others up. It doesn't tear them down." She moved away from the podium, walking among her former tormentors' empty chairs. "Each of you has witnessed how toxic leadership can poison a workplace. You've seen how fear and intimidation can strangle innovation." Her fingers traced the coffee stains on scattered presentation papers, the very analysis that could save the company millions. "But you've also seen something else today," she continued, her gentle tone carrying more weight than Mary's sharpest commands ever had. "You've seen that appearances can deceive, that true worth isn't measured by designer labels or corner offices." David watched from the side, his proud smile softening his earlier stern demeanor as Emily reached for her worn leather bag, the one they'd mocked so often. From it, she pulled out fresh copies of her analysis. "Now, shall we discuss how to actually improve this company? Not through fear, but through collaboration. Not through mockery, but through mutual respect." The room leaned forward, ready to hear what the woman they'd underestimated for so long had to say. Hours after the morning's revelation, Emily and David sat in his private office overlooking the city. The coffee stains on her blouse had dried, but her vision for change was crystal clear. "Everyone needs this," Emily explained, spreading out her newly drafted proposal. "Not just the circle, but every employee. We need to reshape the entire corporate culture." David nodded, adding his own insights to her carefully crafted plan. By late afternoon, another meeting was called. The remaining staff filed in, their faces still processing the morning's events. Emily stood before them, her presence now a blend of authority and approachability. Starting next week, all employees will participate in our new corporate ethics and leadership program, she announced. This isn't optional. It's an investment in who we want to become as a company. She paused, letting the news sink in. And yes, those who were terminated this morning have received emails inviting them to join the program. If they complete it successfully and demonstrate genuine change, they'll be reconsidered for positions, though not their former ones. The message was clear. Transformation was possible, but it had to be earned. As the staff absorbed the news of the mandatory program, Emily's eyes found Brittany, still clutching her notebook, pink sneakers shuffling nervously under her chair. "Mrs. Woods, would you stay behind for a moment?" Emily's request silenced the murmurs of departure. The junior copywriter who had tried to stand up against injustice now stood before them, her face flushed with uncertainty. "This morning," Emily began, "when everyone else chose silence or joined in the mockery, you attempted to speak up. That kind of moral courage is rare, and exactly what this company needs moving forward." David stepped forward, holding an official letter. "We're creating a new position, Director of Corporate Culture and Ethics. The role requires someone who understands both the problem and the solution, someone who has shown integrity even when it was difficult." Brittany's hands trembled as she accepted the letter, her eyes widening at the contents. Her starting salary was triple her current pay, but it was the responsibility that made her voice catch. "You want me to oversee the entire program?" "Sometimes," Emily smiled. "The best leaders are the ones who stand up before they have the power to do so." The response to the program invitation came sooner than expected. Mary Sanders was the first to reply, her email arriving late that night, a lengthy message of remorse and reflection. "Growing up in a household where appearance meant everything," she wrote, "I became what I feared most, someone who judges others based on their cover." Lewis followed shortly after, his usual bravado stripped away. In his program interview, he revealed how his own experience of workplace bullying had twisted into a cycle of inflicting the same pain on others. "I became the very thing that once hurt me," he admitted, hands wrapped around a simple paper cup of coffee. Grace's application included a tearful confession about her internalized shame over her heritage, how years of trying to fit into corporate America had taught her to reject anything that marked her as different. Michael's story unveiled patterns of learned behavior from toxic mentors who had shaped his understanding of power and success. Under the program's guidance, they began to recognize their behaviors weren't just cruel. They were reflections of their own unhealed wounds. Each session peeled back layers of defensive pride, revealing human beings struggling to unlearn years of toxic conditioning. The transformation wasn't complete, but the first steps were genuine. Their designer armor began cracking, revealing glimpses of authenticity underneath. My dear Tales of Light family, this story reminds us that change begins with recognition and redemption is possible through genuine effort. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Have you ever witnessed a workplace transformation or been part of one? Your experiences matter to our community. Drop a comment below and let's discuss how we can all contribute to creating more inclusive and compassionate workplaces. Don't forget to subscribe to Tales of Light for more powerful stories of justice, redemption, and transformation. The 14th floor of Bain and Pierre had transformed beyond recognition. The once rigid corporate atmosphere had given way to an environment of collaboration and mutual respect. The break room, previously a battlefield of social hierarchy, now buzzed with genuine conversation and shared meals. Emily, still carrying her worn leather bag and home-cooked lunches, observed the changes from her office. Her simple presence continued to remind everyone that true leadership didn't require expensive trappings or performative authority. Britney's pink sneakers still squeaked through the halls, but now they carried the authority of positive change. Her ethics workshops had become the company's most anticipated sessions, where titles were left at the door and real conversations flourished. The morning's team meeting would mark 6 months since that fateful day. As employees filed into the conference room, their body language told a story of genuine change. The program's graduation ceremony marked a turning point. Mary, Louis, Grace, and Michael had completed their 6 months of intensive training, each receiving evaluations that showed genuine transformation. Emily and David personally reviewed their progress before making the offer. Junior positions within the company, a humbling step down from their former roles. Surprisingly, they all accepted. Mary took a position as junior analyst, the same role she had once mocked Emily for holding. "I understand now," she said during her first day back, her designer suits replaced by modest business attire. Success isn't about power over others, it's about growing together. The changes within Bain & Pierre rippled through every department. The hierarchy that once suffocated innovation had dissolved into a culture of open collaboration. Junior employees freely shared ideas in meetings, their contributions valued regardless of their titles or tenure. The company's efficiency improved significantly. Emily's original analysis, finally implemented, saved millions as predicted. But the real achievement was in the daily interactions. Team members supporting each other, ideas flowing freely without fear of ridicule, and a workplace where respect had replaced intimidation. The 14th floor's transformation proved that success and compassion could coexist in the corporate world. Emily's journey from the corner cubicle to reshaping company culture proved that true power lies not in domination, but in the courage to remain authentic. Her choice to work from the bottom up, despite her position as owner's wife, showed that character builds more lasting respect than authority. The transformation of the circle demonstrated that change is possible when people confront their own biases and choose growth over pride. Their journey from tormentors to humble learners revealed how workplace culture could shift when given the chance to heal and rebuild. Sometimes the greatest leadership lessons come wrapped in coffee-stained blouses and carried in worn leather bags. Tales of like family remember that change starts with choices. Has someone's humility and strength ever taught you an unexpected lesson? Share your stories below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to join our community of storytellers making a difference.